In the shadows of medieval Europe, in the hidden chambers beneath ancient cathedrals, in the secret vaults that existed in the spaces between official history and forbidden knowledge, there was a plan so audacious, so revolutionary, so carefully concealed that it would take nearly 1,000 years for its true nature to be understood. This was the plan of the Knights Templar, the warrior monks who had devoted themselves to the protection and preservation of a secret so profound that it could reshape the entire foundation of Western civilization. This secret was the truth about Mary Magdalene, and the plan was nothing less than the eventual restoration of the feminine divine to its rightful place in human consciousness and in the structure of human society. The story begins in the aftermath of the Crusades, in a time when the Knights Templar had returned from the Holy Land, carrying with them artifacts and knowledge that would change everything. They had discovered, hidden in the ruins of ancient temples, texts and objects that revealed the true history of Mary Magdalene, that documented her role as Christ's closest companion, that proved that she had borne his child, that showed that the institutional church had deliberately suppressed and distorted her significance. The Templars understood immediately that this knowledge was dangerous, that it threatened the very foundation of the church's authority and power. They understood that if this knowledge became widely known, if people understood that Christ had a child, that there was a lineage of descendants who carried his consciousness, that the church's monopoly on spiritual authority was based on a lie, then the entire structure of medieval society would be destabilized. And so the Templars made a decision that would define their order and their legacy. They decided to preserve this knowledge, to protect it, to keep it safe until a time when the world would be ready to receive it. But they also decided to do something more. They decided to work toward the day when this knowledge could be revealed, when the truth about Mary Magdalene could be restored, when the feminine divine could be restored to its rightful place. This was the plan. It was a long-term plan, a plan that would span centuries, a plan that would require the dedication and sacrifice of countless individuals across generations. It was a plan that was encoded into the very structure of the Templar Order, into their symbols and their rituals, into the architecture of their temples, into the sacred geometry that they used in their buildings and their artwork. The Templars created a network of guardians, individuals who were trained to preserve and protect the knowledge, who understood their role in the great work of restoration that was unfolding. They established secret societies and hidden communities. They encoded the knowledge into symbols and stories that would be preserved in folklore and legend. They worked to ensure that the knowledge would not be completely lost, that fragments of it would survive in the consciousness of humanity, waiting for the day when it could be fully revealed. But the institutional church, sensing the threat that the Templars represented, began a campaign of suppression. The church accused the Templars of heresy, of worshipping false gods, of engaging in blasphemous practices. In reality, the church was trying to suppress the knowledge that the Templars were protecting, trying to destroy the network of guardians, trying to prevent the plan from coming to fruition. In the early 14th century, the King of France, acting in concert with the Pope, launched a devastating attack on the Templar Order. The Templars were arrested, tortured, and executed. Their order was officially dissolved. Their properties were seized. Their knowledge was scattered. It seemed as though the plan had been destroyed, that the knowledge would be lost forever. But the Templars had anticipated this possibility. Before the final destruction of their order, they had taken steps to ensure that the knowledge would survive. They had hidden their most precious documents and artifacts in secret locations. They had dispersed their members to various parts of the world. They had established underground networks that would continue the work of preservation and protection even after the official order had been destroyed. The story of the recovery of this knowledge in the modern world begins with a historian named Jacques, a man who had spent his entire life researching the Knights Templar, trying to understand the true nature of their order, trying to decode the symbols and the messages that they had left behind. Jacques had noticed something peculiar in the Templar documents that had survived, something that most scholars had overlooked or misinterpreted. There were references scattered throughout the texts to something called the Plan of the Rose, or the Sacred Feminine Restoration. These references were cryptic and symbolic, written in a language that seemed designed to be understood only by those who possessed the key to decode it. He began to research these references obsessively, comparing them with other historical documents, with the teachings of various mystical traditions, with the fragmentary accounts that had survived in the apocryphal Gospels and the Gnostic texts. And slowly, a picture began to emerge, a picture of a plan so comprehensive and so carefully constructed that it seemed almost impossible that it could have remained hidden for so long. The plan spoke of a gradual awakening of consciousness, a slow but inevitable shift in human understanding and values. It spoke of a time, far in the future, when the knowledge of Mary Magdalene would be restored, when women would begin to claim their power, when the institutions built on patriarchal domination would begin to crumble, when new forms of spirituality would emerge that honored the sacred feminine. But most importantly, the plan spoke of a specific moment, a moment of convergence, a time when all of the conditions would be right for the full revelation of the truth about Mary Magdalene. This moment was not predetermined, but would be created through the choices and the actions of those who understood the plan and who were committed to its fulfillment. Jacques realized that he was living in the midst of this moment of convergence. He realized that the conditions for the revelation of the truth were finally becoming aligned, that the time had come for the knowledge to be brought forth, that the plan of the Templars was reaching its culmination. He made the decision to dedicate his life to understanding and revealing this plan. He traveled to the locations where the Templars had hidden their most precious knowledge. He studied the architecture of their temples, decoding the sacred geometry that contained the encoded messages. He researched the lineage of the Templar guardians, tracing the network of individuals who had continued the work of preservation and protection through the centuries, and he discovered something extraordinary. He discovered that the Templar plan was not just about the restoration of Mary Magdalene's memory, not just about the revelation of the truth about her relationship with Christ. The plan was far more comprehensive and far more profound. It was about the transformation of human consciousness itself, about the shift from a patriarchal to a more balanced understanding of power and divinity, about the restoration of the balance between the masculine and feminine principles that had been disrupted at the beginning of recorded history. The plan spoke of a new world order, not in the sense of a totalitarian system of control, but in the sense of a fundamentally new way of organizing human society, a way that was based on equality rather than hierarchy, on cooperation rather than domination, on the honoring of the sacred feminine as well as the sacred masculine. If you want a practical, step-by-step explanation of the path of knowledge we're exploring here today, I've created a complete guide to help you apply it in your own life. You'll find the link in the description, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We would love to know. Jacques discovered that there were still guardians, individuals who had inherited the responsibility of the Templars, who understood their role in the great work of restoration. These guardians were scattered across the world, working in various fields and professions, but all connected by a common commitment to the plan. Some were scholars and historians, some were artists and visionaries, some were spiritual teachers and healers, some were politicians and activists. But all of them understood that they were participating in something far greater than themselves, that they were part of a lineage that stretched back to the Templars, that they were working toward the fulfillment of a plan that had been set in motion nearly 1,000 years ago. One of these guardians was a woman named Isabel, a woman who lived in a remote location in the south of France, in a place that had been a center of Templar activity for centuries. Isabel was a scholar and a mystic, a woman who had devoted her life to the study and preservation of the Templar knowledge. When Jacques finally made contact with her, after years of searching, he felt as though he had found the missing piece of the puzzle. "The plan is real," Isabel told him, confirming everything that he had discovered through his research. "It has been preserved and protected by a lineage of guardians that extends back to the Templars themselves, and we are living in the moment of its fulfillment. The conditions are finally aligned. The knowledge is ready to be revealed, and those who understand the plan are being called to step forward, to help bring about the transformation that has been foretold." She taught Jacques the deeper layers of the plan, showed him how it connected to the teachings of Mary Magdalene, how it related to the prophecies of various spiritual traditions, how it was aligned with the natural evolution of human consciousness. And as Jacques studied these teachings, he began to understand the profound wisdom and the comprehensive vision that lay at the heart of the Templar plan. The plan was not about revenge against the church, not about the destruction of patriarchal institutions, not about the elevation of women above men. The plan was about balance, about the restoration of wholeness, about the recognition that both the masculine and feminine principles were essential for the full flowering of human consciousness and human civilization. The plan spoke of a time when women would rise to positions of power and influence, not to dominate men, but to bring the wisdom of the feminine divine into the structures of power. It spoke of a time when the earth would be honored and protected, when the exploitation and violation of nature would be recognized as a violation of the divine. It spoke of a time when spirituality would be understood not as something external and institutional, but as something intimate and personal, available to all beings through direct experience and inner awakening. Jacques spent the final years of his life working to synthesize all of the knowledge he had gathered, to create a comprehensive account of the Templar plan and its implications for the future of humanity. He wrote books that were published under various names. He created documentaries and videos. He trained other researchers who could carry forward the work, and he established networks of guardians who were working together to help bring about the fulfillment of the plan. When Jacques died, his work lived on. The knowledge of the Templar plan began to spread, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. More and more people began to discover the truth about Mary Magdalene, to understand the significance of the Templar legacy, to recognize that they too were part of the great work of transformation that was unfolding. And in our own time, we are witnessing the fulfillment of the Templar plan in unprecedented ways. We are seeing women rising to positions of power and influence across all sectors of society. We are seeing the Earth rising up to protect herself through climate crisis and ecological upheaval, demanding that we change our relationship with her. We are seeing the suppressed feminine divine emerging in spirituality and art and culture. We are seeing the old patriarchal order crumbling and new forms of community and consciousness emerging in its place. The plan of the Templars was not a plan for a distant future. It was a plan for now, for the present moment, for the transformation that is happening in every breath, in every awakening heart, in every individual who chooses to honor the sacred feminine and to work toward the restoration of balance. The forbidden secret of Mary Magdalene is being revealed. The plan that the Templars hid is coming to fruition. And those who understand this plan, who are committed to its fulfillment, are being called to step forward, to become active participants in the great work of transformation that is reshaping human consciousness and human civilization. The Templars understood something that the institutional church could not accept, that the feminine divine was not subordinate to the masculine, but equal and essential. They understood that the suppression of Mary Magdalene's true role and significance was a tragedy that had consequences far beyond the individual, consequences that affected the entire trajectory of human history and human consciousness. And they made a plan to correct this tragedy, to restore the balance, to bring about a world in which the sacred feminine was honored and celebrated, in which women were recognized as equal partners in the divine work of creation and transformation, in which the earth was protected and revered as the body of the goddess herself. This plan is now being fulfilled. The knowledge is emerging. The transformation is happening. And you are invited to become part of this great work, to recognize your role in the restoration of balance, to commit yourself to the honoring of the sacred feminine in all of its forms, to help create a world in which the plan of the Templars is fully realized. The forbidden secret is no longer forbidden. The plan is no longer hidden. The time of revelation is now. And the future of humanity depends on whether we choose to embrace this transformation or to resist it, to honor the sacred feminine or to continue the suppression, to create a world of balance and wholeness or to perpetuate the domination and the suffering that has characterized human history. The Templars have passed the torch to us. The guardians of the knowledge are calling us to awaken. The plan is unfolding. And the question that is being posed to each of us is this: will you answer the call? Will you become a guardian of the knowledge? Will you help to bring about the fulfillment of the plan? Will you work toward the restoration of balance and the honoring of the sacred feminine? The answer to these questions will determine not just the future of humanity, but the future of the entire planet, the future of all life that depends on the restoration of balance between the masculine and feminine. Principles, the future of a world in which the wisdom of Mary Magdalene is finally recognized and honored, in which the plan of the Templars is finally fulfilled. And if you like this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.